Yisar, assalamu alaikum.
Ji, Walaikum assalam, Sheikh. I just wanted to ask a few questions like maybe a question in English if that's okay with you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so basically, like I am coming from a Sunni background. Was with the Deobandis for a long time and had a kind of like figured out that they're messed up in a lot of things. So I'm really in a discovery phase, trying to figure out lost trust in a lot of things, right? So obviously, like I just found your lectures and YouTube video very recently, a few days ago. So my question to you is that, okay, so I want to like explore everything before I make a decision on what I'm gonna gravitate towards. So far, the Shia view seems very like I think there's a lot of problem in the Sunni narration. So the thing is like here's a question. Like my question is with the Hadith, like the Hadith, sciences and well, can you tell me a little bit about the how the Hadith preservation,
so there are two ways that Hadith were preserved in Islam. One is by the Umari way, one is Shia way. Our brethren in Islam, they concurred. The Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, and Quran had not been compiled, and Hadith was never compiled during his lifetime. And Sahaba there were some Sahaba who wrote some ahadith, but those scriptures were lost. They were never narrated from. And then it was Sahaba and Sahaba's memory, and we depend on their honesty that they truthfully and wholly narrated the sayings and the actions of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, these things are questionable. There's no reason that Sahaba could not lie, and there's no reason Sahaba could not forget, and there's no reason to believe that Sahaba would not be prejudiced by their own political inclinations and their own political interests. Furthermore, during the lifetimes of Sahaba, there was no effort by Sahaba to preserve Hadith. There were no schools, there were no lectures, there was no platform, no framework in which Sahaba made sure that all the things they learned from the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam were transferred to the coming generation. There's no evidence of that. All the narrations of a hadith that you see from the companions, there are conversations that something comes up and they mention something, or there was a need for something and they mention something. They are not in the framework of a school, of a lecture, of an institute whereby the objective is to make sure that this information, the sayings of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam are preserved. After that, it's the generation of the tabi'een, and after them the tabi'een, and also them. They did not write hadith. It was all based on memory, and it was also obviously with respect to Sahaba, our brethren say that they do not lie and they do not forget. And but because they never do jarh of Sahaba. With respect to tabi'een, they agreed that they could lie and they could be untrustworthy and they could forget. So after tabi'een, it was after year 150, around year 150, that 120-ish, that they started writing. Chronicling of hadith began by writing. And at that time, people were really not trained in writing well. That is the problem. So people, because there were no schools, Arabs did not know how to write. There was few people who knew how to write, but they made a lot of mistakes and putting the dots and whatnot. That made a big difference in writing. So even if a person wrote hadith, it doesn't mean what he wrote was something that was really preserved what he was. And these writings were mostly for the person himself. They were not books for other people to read. These were notes that people wrote because they heard hadith and they chronicled the hadith in writing for later use. So the time of tadween of hadith, compilation of hadith, comes after 2 centuries, in the 3rd century. Ahmad ibn Hanbal passes away in year 225. Bukhari dies at the year 255. Muslim dies at the year 260. So that is when hadith were written. So there's a long period between the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the chronicling of books of hadith, the writing of books of hadith. A big portion of this duration is the period in which hadith was never written. It was solely dependent on the memory of people, and memory is very faulty. And it's just not memory. People are biased. People, of course, if they like something, they will shed it in a very good light. And if they dislike somebody, they will abstain from narrating good things about him, and they will find something negative to narrate about him. And it was obviously Muslim history is full of animosity and infighting and many things. So that's one way that hadith was narrated. And if you take something that was preserved through this mechanism, obviously you cannot take it to any academia and rely upon it that it will prove anything historical or anything scientific, or take it to any legal court. And on the basis of a narration as such, a judge could rule definitely that this really happened so, because there's because of the question of the impossibility of being sure that it's indeed true. Now that is how our brethren narrated hadith. According to madhab of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam knew that he's living amongst a people who are unlearned, who do not know how to read and write. Illiterate people. So, and he had brought all this information from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this message that encompasses every aspect of human life. Not only that society, which was a very backward society, which was not very advanced at the time of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought a message from Allah that has guidance for the most advanced civilizations to come thousands of years ahead of us. And all questions that mankind would have with regard to creation, with regard to the Yawm al-Qiyamah, with regard to the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and with regard to our actions, how to live a proper life. So it was impossible for the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to preserve that information by relying on Sahaba, who are illiterate people, whose brain, whose minds, whose imagination does not go beyond what is in that backward society of Medina of that time. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam transferred all of his knowledge to Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salam, to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He dictated everything that Allah had given him from knowledge, from his holy mouth, with his own words, to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, and he wrote everything down. And aside from that, he said everything, and he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make sure that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam does not forget anything. And Allah accepted his prayers. And Ahl al-Bayt alayhim, and he told his ummah that after me, when I die, the only way that you could find salvation and find eternal bliss and happiness is by following Quran and Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. And that his brother is the Mawla of every person he is a Mawla of. Salamullah alayhim wa Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam, from his time, his companions used to write down his ahadith. Kitab Sulaym ibn Qais is written by his companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. We do not have a ilm of jarh and ta'deel because we don't rely on chains of narration. We have ilm of al-Musannifeen, Kitab al-Faharis, the books of indexes, of bibliographies of people who have written books. So the ashab of A'imma alayhim salatu wassalam, they were all of our narrators, they were authors. They wrote ahadith. They wrote ahadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. And Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam had majalis, they had sessions whereby they would dictate and people would write down their sayings. And these were the result was this was thousands of books, thousands of epistles of hadith at the time of Imam Jafar al-Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam al-Kazmi alayhi salam. And the students of these Imams alayhi salam, they also wrote, the students of Imams alayhi salam, they wrote books. So if you go to our books of hadith, books of faharis, you see thousands of books. So time comes to the time of Kulaini and Shaykh al-Saduq and the like. So they had in front of them this rich libraries of trustworthy and truthfully narrated hadith that they could be sure 100% that these are the words of Imams alayhi salam. From those, they wrote the books that we have today, Kitab al-Kafi, Kitab al-Man Hadar al-Faqih, and the like. So Shia books have been narrated, not orally, narrated through manuscripts. That is the big difference between us and the Mukhalifi. Yeah. You have another question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to follow up.
Sure.
So the manuscripts, I mean, there's a lot of manuscript research in Western academia and also, I mean, throughout the Muslim world. I'm just wondering, this rich turath of the Shia scholarship, where do we have like extant manuscripts, or is there an opportunity to engage in research in this sort of study? In what are the centers that one should be looking to go into to have an access to
so
this
manuscripts is very difficult to preserve, the original manuscripts that were written by the authors, because they were written on papers, and paper, after a few years, paper deteriorates. Usually paper deteriorates within one person's lifetime. We are talking about over 1,000 years. In the Muslim world, there was no mechanism to preserve manuscripts. However, these manuscripts are preserved through copying. So there are many books. Right. Yeah. So you can go to any online libraries. They carry many books that were written at the time of the Imams alayhi salam.
So personally, you
don't even have to go to a physical library. You can go online, do search. You'll see lots of books that were written during the lifetimes of the Imams alayhi salam.
Just two follow-up questions, short. Could you give us like, give me a site or a bunch of sites where I can find the Sheikh Kutubs, because I'm not used to, like,
you can go to alfikr.org. They have very good books.
Alfikr.org. Okay, that's one question. And the second question is, like, as far as your own training, so have you trained from my understanding is that you're a trained scholar. So where did you study, and where would you recommend?
So I studied in Qom and in Najaf al-Ashraf, but they don't teach these things that I tell you. They don't.
Okay.
It was a waste of time for me. I mean, I learned some things, but I also wasted a lot of my time. And I tell all people who want to go to Qom and Najaf, that's a big waste of time. So the things that I teach people, these are my research, my effort that I compiled up through years of hard work. Yeah, but I went there in Qom and Najaf. They teach you some basic things, but there are the basic things that they teach, and a lot of useless things they teach. The basic things that they teach are not better than what they teach in Arab countries. And the useless things they teach, they're very, very good at it, but they're useless. So they teach a lot of usul al-fiqh, a lot of mantiq, a lot of philosophy, a lot of kalam, especially philosophy, a lot of tasawwuf they teach. You could spend 5 lifetimes there and keep learning, but they have nothing to do with Islam.
Right. And do you, maybe I said 2 questions, but I'm really in a situation I'm trying to figure out. Is there a concept of like sohba in your understanding from the Ahl al-Bayt? Like,
sohba means being companion, to have been around a person. Of course, who can deny?
In the more, like, in the tasawwuf.
Yeah, but we do not believe any person who saw the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he professed his prophethood, and he professed the words of shahadatain, that he is truthful, and he is going to be good for the rest of his life. Yeah, what he did was good. A person who goes to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he embraces Islam, that itself is good, if he's not a hypocrite, if he's not a munafiq. But there's no guarantee that later on he may not do some bad things, or he may not lie, or he may not cheat. There are Sahaba who have been who were stoned to death by the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam for adultery. There were Sahaba who Omar and Uthman, they lashed them for drinking wine. There were Sahaba who Tulayha ibn Khuwaylid al-Asadi. He was a Sahabi. He claimed prophethood when Prophet was sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive. So yes, of course, we Suhba, meaning that someone goes to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and sees him. That is obviously that's true. Who can deny that? But it does not. That does not guarantee that this person will have an upright character for the rest of his life. So Sahabi are just like other people. They are subject to examination, whether they have failed or whether they have had good character.
I guess my question was more in the line of like when you're studying, when you're trying to get close to Allah and trying to understand the understanding of Ahlul Bayt, do you suffice yourself only with the kutubs that are existent, or do you also refer to a living chain of scholarship in your particularly yourself? Like, that
living chain of narration doesn't have any practical value at all. I have ijaz of narration, but what does it mean? It just means nothing. Chain of narration now between myself and Kulaini, it doesn't mean anything much. It's just a formality. Yeah.
Right. So in summary, I guess study, learn, and try to practice, and then you'll gain the spirituality and closeness to Allah. Is that what you're pretty much?
So chain of narration is something else. Spirituality is that if you have sincerity and you pray, then you find spirituality. If you don't commit sins, okay, that's certain. That's 100%. That is guaranteed with certitude. That's having a good character, not lying, not cheating, not committing sins, and praying sincerely. Yeah. Okay. No more questions.
Jazakallah.
Thank you. Allah bless you. Okay, bro.